Hey, Internet friends. On Monday, February 26, 2024, Jacob Rothschild was reported dead. He was heir to the Rothschild banking dynasty, a family who was notorious for financing every side of every recent war, a family intimately associated with the Federal Reserve. He's an important figure to discuss as much of what his family has taken credit for. We're seeing the consequences of these actions play out today. The name Rothschild is synonymous with current events, even though they like to orchestrate from behind the scenes. For example, before World War II in 1917, the British Foreign Secretary wrote a letter to Lionel Walter Rothschild. This was called the Balfour Declaration, and in it he said that the British government supported a Jewish state in Palestine, which of course emboldened the Zionist movement and eventual establishment of Israel. Obviously, that's a big deal today because everyone's still fighting over it. The hard truth is that Israel is a common denominator in every major conflict we see play out across the world stage.
And here it is, the Balfour Declaration. What do you feel when you see it here?
I genuinely feel it's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of the Jewish people. If you think it took 3,000 years to get to this. And then you say, how did this miracle happen? It's the most incredible piece of opportunism.
Talking about the Rothschild family can be kind of touch and go. And I'm not talking about just the censorship aspect of this. In a sense, they're the manifestation of this reality's boogeyman, and they're dedicated to their role. For an example, here's a picture of Jacob Rothschild with Marina Abramovic in front of a painting entitled Satan Summoning His Legions. Of course, Marina Abramovic is responsible for greatest hits like Spirit Cooking, as she was one of the central figures of Pizzagate. Zelensky even asked Marina Abramovic to be the ambassador to Ukraine back in 2023. And you remember all this discourse about Ukraine being the new Israel. It's almost too perfect, it feels too scripted to be true. All that's really needed are faint echoes of maniacal laughter playing on a loop in the background. But of course, never mention blood libel. It's just a anti-Semitic conspiracy theory.
There was also a part in there by Sabrina, and she was on this page right here. So before I go to the paragraph that she kind of like just went over, it's this paragraph right here. It's very substantial, and I think it needs to be entered into the record. Let me first take you to the top of this page. So it was pretty easy to find. Wikipedia, Rothschild family. Now, it's a long page, so I'm going to give you a little quick tour of this page because it is a very important page. Like, if you're going to read any historical entry, this is one of the most interesting you could dig into because it's very substantial and not a lot of people want to talk about the substance and meaning of the whole thing. The Rothschild family is a wealthy Ashkenazi Jewish noble banking family originally from Frankfurt that rose to prominence with Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a court factor. That's what that means. To the German landgraves of Hesse-Kassel in the free city of Frankfurt, Holy Roman Empire, who established his banking business in the 1760s. So before America was founded, he's working for the guy who rents out troops to the British Empire to kind of do their colonizing work. And that's how he gets his claim to fame. So you can find that little summary, and here's an overview. And I want you to keep your eye as we scroll down all these properties that they've had over the years. And I want you to think of the other richest people that you might know about. Your Zuckerbergs, your Bezoses, your Gateses, your Rockefellers, your Vanderbilts, your Morgans. And I want you to compare, or even prime ministers' palaces for countries. I want you to compare it to what this family has built for themselves over the year. They were so influential that they had their own style called Le Gut Rothschild, and it meant the Rothschild style. So the Vanderbilt mansion in America is built after the Rothschild family houses. It's styled in their style. Same with Rockefeller and other robber barons of America who were dependent on this banking empire for their wealth and power. So here's an overview. You can see this is the house of the Rothschild family in Frankfurt, very modest, humble. They also lived in the Green Shield house. So it's not just Red Shield. They also lived in the Green Shield house. That's where they trained the Warburgs. Here's one of their houses and estates. Here's another estate. They come to prominence in the Napoleonic Wars. Here's more estates here. Here's more estates here. Look at these buildings. I mean, this is some pretty serious stuff. This looks like the capital of a country here, and it's just a chateau in France. Okay. Influential Waterloo, a lot of controversial history, very interesting artifacts to be studied about this whole area. International high finance, they invent international banking and insurance with the Alliance Assurance Company of 1824, which still exists today. The Rio Tinto Mining Company, right? There's some very valuable, De Beers, some very valuable resources that were collected along the way. Again, keep looking at this. Mentmore Towers, you've seen this in Batman, you've seen this in like Eyes Wide Shut and other, maybe it was Chateau Ferrier. These are movie palaces, right? Some of these are actually, you can see tours, they're vacant and people go in there with cameras and walk around. It's fascinating to see the richness of it. Over here, the family funded Cecil Rhodes in the creation of African colony of Rhodesia. They kind of left out South Africa there and his work there. That's convenient to people who are reading the page, but maybe inconvenient to their education. Uh, Nathan Rothschild is the most powerful man in Britain. Failed verification, but there are two other footnotes for that claim. The Niles Weekly Register, volume 49 of 1836. Now, okay, I have an 1835 one. Do I have this quote? Yes, I do. I have the original newspaper clipping of this quote here. But again, this is a claim. It's unsubstantiated, but it's later proven in history to kind of like prove to be true. This is, foreshadowing the state of Israel. And this is 1836 when the Sultan was still dealing with various offers for that country. Changes to the family fortune, various wars. Some of the Rothschilds stuff was taken in Germany. Interestingly enough, the family moved its banking out of Germany in like 1908, right before World War I, and they didn't reopen in Germany until recently, like last couple decades. So the Rothschilds who were left behind might have been like the black sheeps of the family that weren't let in on the other bigger picture. So it's a very interesting angle to study. And I have many, many, many autobiographies, biographies of the Rothschild family in their own words, telling these stories. It's very fascinating. It's like reading, 20 Mario Puzo novels all about the same family, because it's like some gangster hijacking, black market type stuff in the early days and maybe up through, well, maybe the present. We'll see. In addition, the New York Times wrote the Rothschilds, quote, grossly misjudged the opportunities directly across the Atlantic, end quote. Well, that's not necessarily true, but they did turn down insuring the Titanic because they had doubts that it was unsinkable, which is an interesting opt out on an offer back in the day. Hereditary titles, the English branch, the French branch. Again, look at these palaces, look at these buildings that they lived in at the time. Very impressive. Statements of wealth, Austrian branch, the Neapolitan branch, Jewish identity and positions on Zionism. Now, this is where Sabrina was digging in, saying it's not homogeneous, and that various Rothschilds disagreed or agreed with Zionism as a concept. Now, one of the things she read over was his nephew, Victor Lord Rothschild, was against granting asylum for helping of Jewish refugees in 1938. Now, also in 1938, I'm pretty sure it's Victor Rothschild who's the Hollywood consultant on the film The House of Rothschild, which won an Academy Award in 1938, starring George Arliss and Boris Karloff, the guy who plays Frankenstein, right? A legit movie told from the family's perspective, not taken out of context. And there are many artifacts and pieces of evidence that back up that story. Victor was a member of the Cambridge Five spy ring, which helped to have control of communism from a Western perspective. He's also the one that like got away with it. And he has a whole bunch of other interesting things. He has a book, I think it's called The Fifth Man. It's about Victor Rothschild. It's a very expensive, rare book, and if you can get your hands on it, very interesting history. So that's that part of that aspect. That might not be the whole story on Victor Rothschild. I just wanted to point out. And that's Jacob Rothschild's dad, the fifth man Cambridge spy guy that worked with Kim Philby and, almost toppled American, Anglo and American intelligence for communism. So there's that. After the death of James Jacob Rothschild, his eldest son, Alphonse Rothschild, took over management of the company and was most in support of Eretz Israel, which is the land of Israel. In this return, after 3,000 years, these guys are going to get it done. The Rothschild family archives show that during the 1870s, the families contributed. So 1870s, this is not because of Hitler. This is not because of World War II and genocide going on. This is 1870s because they could. They got a plan together. They're industrious. They communicated their plan. They got funding. They started making alliances. Okay. Standard operating procedure. Nothing to see there. Now, here's the paragraph. Baron Edmund James de Rothschild, known in Israel simply as the Baron Rothschild or the benefactor. He is the youngest son of James Jacob de Rothschild. He's the patron of the first permanent settlement in Palestine at Rishon LeZion, 1882. And that's in this book right here. Rothschild and Early Jewish Colonization in Palestine is the title. The publishing company didn't want to put that on the cover. Do you know why? Because it's published by Hebrew University and it's a little inconvenient to their imprimatur, but it's there. Okay. So this is scholarly, academic level, Hebrew University in Israel history that needs to be recognized regarding the ongoing struggle today. Rothschild and Early Jewish Colonization in Palestine. So going back over here to this paragraph. So he makes the first permanent settlement at Rishon LeZion. Did you know that this is one of the settlements attacked on 10/7? The first permanent settlement in Palestine over 140 years ago. And they tell you it started on 10/7. He also provided funding for the establishment of Petah Tivka as a permanent settlement in 1883. Overall, he bought from Ottoman landlords 2 to 3% of the land, which now makes up present-day Israel. That's a lot of land for one guy to just buy up. After Baron Hirsch died, now who's he? He's mentioned 30 years earlier in Moses Hess's Roman Jerusalem Last Nationalist Question, 1862. So he's one of the co-conspirators to bring this about. The Hirsch-founded Jewish Colonization Association started supporting the settlement of Palestine in 1896, and Baron Rothschild took an active role in the organization and transferred his Palestinian land holdings as well as 15 million francs to it. In 1924, now that's a good skip from 1896 to 1924, he reorganized the Palestinian branch of the ICA into the Palestine Jewish Colonization Association, PICA, which acquired more than 125,000 acres of land and set up their ventures. In Tel Aviv, the Rothschild Boulevard is named after him, as are many city localities, right? So she covered this part kind of, but then the Rothschilds played a significant part in the founding of Israel's governmental infrastructure. Well, that's fascinating. They create a country and the government, and they pay for the Capitol building because James A. de Rothschild financed the Knesset. What's the Knesset? It's the unicameral legislature of Israel. So when you fund something, does that give you some sort of influence or control or say or anything? You get anything for that? It's a gift to the state of Israel, which his family created. So they gave a gift to themselves, and there needs to be a government to run their country that has nuclear weapons. And the Supreme Court of Israel building was donated to Israel by Dorothy de Rothschild. That's his widow. After he passed away, she continued his philanthropy. Outside the president's chamber is displayed the letter Dorothy de Rothschild wrote to then Prime Minister Shimon Peres, expressing her intention to donate a new building for the Supreme Court. Do you think if you donate the building the Supreme Court operates in, maybe those people have some sort of allegiance to your endeavors and they care about your goals? Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that exists and it's left out of everybody's conversations out there, not including Sabby, because I think she did a good job actually going through this page, sifting it and finding. Now, let me just continue and finish the tour. Places in Israel named after Rothschild family members. She covered that. Modern businesses, investment and philanthropy, Rothschild Group, Edmund de Rothschild. This is the group right here. The Swiss Rothschilds funded George Soros in 1968. They funded his quantum fund. They don't want to tell you about that. And if you look up that reference, they delete it from the internet and you have to use Internet Archive to find it. RIT Partners, that's Jacob Rothschild, who just passed away. And then there's many other aspects. We're only halfway down their page right now, right? So their influence on history, it's just like Quigley said, it's not that I have an aversion to this. I just think that the activities of this group are substantial and should be known to history. And there's a lot. Look, here's a list of family members, and you can read. And I have mapped almost everyone on this list into the history blueprint because I wanted to understand this topic long time ago because I felt it was substantial enough. And by the way, look, the buildings just keep going. You see those buildings? So substantial influence over many, many, not just decades, many centuries at this point, 300 years influence in Western society. And yet it's the thing that you're not allowed to talk about until Jacob Rothschild happened to pass away. And now we can cover such facts in an objective manner for the edification of an audience who seeks to be educated on these topics and not be ignorant, because ignorance is the basis of all racism. And if you want to make racism a hate crime, can we make ignorance a hate crime too? Can we put people in prison for the rest of their life for ignorance? Because I got a list of people I would start with, just like they got a list of people they don't want talking freely, uncensored on the internet to other people, because it threatens their bullshit agendas, right? Their agenda, as you just seen from this episode tonight, how fragile this agenda is. You see that. And they don't want people to know that because knowledge is power. It might make you say, no, thank you, please, to the offers that they make you in the future. So as we move forward, I just wanted to put those into this time capsule because I think that's a substantial contribution to humanity, and their place deserves to be known. They take credit for, why not take credit for creating a whole country that's continued to have war in that area? There wasn't war like this for 100 years before that. There wasn't like Arabs and Jews going at each other the whole time. But because of that agreement of giving away property that the government of Britain didn't own in the first place and promised to two other parties, by the way, right? Like, it's caused a big stir. And so when they tell you it started on 10/7 and it's one-sided and you unconditional support, I don't question. Yeah, you should question all that stuff that your politicians are telling you. And I'll tell you what, that lobby is just not in our country. It's over in Britain too. They got the same issue, right? So there are people right now seeking to protect themselves from the spread of this purposeful misunderstanding that has led to almost a world war at this point.